Hello and welcome to the PitCast in 2022 by the Pit Crew Online, from the fans for the fans. Now, this year, as I've said before, we've decided to shake things up. So we're going to bring you our thoughts on different racing series throughout the world. This month, we're heading over to the States because we're talking all things IndyCar. I'm your host, Jess Bird, your resident Formula One editor at Pit Crew Online, and we have two very special guests with us today. We have our expert statsman and contributor to the Pit Crew Online, Chris. How are you, Chris? It's lovely to have you back on the PitCast.
I'm not too bad, thanks. Yeah, glad to be back. It's been a while. Looking forward to the action-packed weekend forthcoming.
Good. Yeah, it's going to be a good one, I think. And our second guest is our newly appointed NASCAR editor and IndyCar writer, Jae. How are you, Jae? How are you feeling about being on the PitCast?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you very much for having me on. And this is the first for me, but excited for it. Yeah.
Lovely. Okay, so before we dive into the Indy500, which is happening this weekend, I just wanted to talk briefly about the IndyCar season so far. As it stands, Will Power is currently top of the standings after 5 rounds, but this is the 4th time the drivers have changed at the top. It's been a bit of an unpredictable season so far. So I just wanted to know what your thoughts are on that and how you think the drivers have been performing so far.
Well, first off, Will Power has taken a very different approach this year. He says he wants consistency to be the key, and his mental health is something he's worked on a lot to deliver that. So he's not too concerned about race wins. Just wanting to be up there in the top 5. So that's certainly helped him. But also Penske as a whole, apart from Palou, just about leading after Barber. So after, I think, the 4th race, it's been Penske, whether it's been McLaughlin at the start or then Newgarden with 2 consecutive wins, and then Will Power. They're very much season focused, and then they're doing a good job overall.
Well, we pretty summarised it all, really. I mean, last time out, it took advantage of sort of the calamity really that happened. They raced in rain for a change, but it's more of a common tradition now of Palou, Newgarden, McLaughlin not being able to be at the front. Only driver to be sort of top 5. I mean, it was now 3rd twice and sort of 3/4, but coming forward to this weekend, the form guide tends to go out of the book. So we'll see what happens this time out. But the only driver with top 5 times, maybe him and Russell from an F1 perspective are eating the same kind of things in breakfast. So it should be an interesting one, really. But he's Mr. Consistency over here in the States.
Yeah, consistency is always key, particularly in something like IndyCar, where it seems to be very unpredictable most of the time, every time I've watched anyway. But I'd love to know what they all eat for breakfast before they do their racing. So let's dive into the Indy 500, as you say. It is a very different weekend to pretty much the rest of the IndyCar season. They do race on oval tracks, of course, but this race is very much a different spectacle. So let's start with the incredible pole from Scott Dixon. It was a great drive from him to start at the front for the 5th time. What do we think of that performance, and what do we think of his chances in the race on Sunday?
Well, he had pole last year. It didn't really sort of come to fruition. We finished 17th, so you can say that maybe pole isn't best. You can sort of sit in the drag and save fuel, but you can sort of, only takes one person to go in the wall, and then they all going down into pit lane and take someone at the back to get some fuel in and go straight into an alternate strategy. And it goes all down to the last couple of laps. Like we saw maybe 2016 when Rossi won. He was on a different strategy and managed to just eke out the last couple of laps. So you don't really find who's going to win till maybe the last 20, 30 laps when it comes to IndyCar. But being at the front, you stay out the middle pack, so you don't get caught in the big one. I know that's a NASCAR phrase, but it sometimes does happen when it comes to the 500. So he's out of the pack when it comes to big machine, but he's definitely in the right place.
I would say it's certainly Ganassi's overall race to lose, with how strong that team have been in practice and then the qualifying weekend as a whole. And Dixon was just phenomenal. I mean, he did 234-mile-an-hour laps for laps 1 and 2, which was quite a shock. And then he was still consistent enough in laps 3 and 4, which is not usually seen. The drop-off is usually, at least 2 miles an hour by the end. But he was good enough for the pole, and he was quickest in fast 12 as well the session before. So Yeah, Dixon can't afford to do what he did in 2020 with Sato, where he just wasn't quite aggressive enough and was kind of building up to do that final lap pass, and it got cut short thanks to the yellow flag with a few laps to go. So I think he might be prepared to be at the front more towards the end rather than dueling and letting people like the likes of Sato and Rossi in the pass in terms of how aggressive they are. He won't let them sit at the front in front of him in the final laps, I think, this year. I think he will be prepared to be out front instead, like Helio was last year, and held off for the win.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting tactic. But speaking of the other Chip Ganassi drivers, they managed to get all 5 cars in the fast 12. As you say, they were very quick. And then they had 4 competing in the fast 6 for the pole lap. So all the drivers did a really great job. And it's such a great way to go into the race weekend. But what do you think in terms of the team? What do you think that will mean to them? And as you say, they're very quick. But is there anything they can do with the other drivers? Maybe some sort of tactic to make sure at least one of them wins? Or is it just a case of just see how the race goes?
Well, yeah, that's going to sort of the alternate strategy. You can throw sort of Jimmy Johnson onto an alternate strategy if, say, you get an early incident. Sato was the one to put everything on a knife's edge. He threw it in the wall in qualifying, but kept his foot in. Same with so he's been on ovals majority of his career. So he's one to maybe keep it out of the wall. He had a few rookie errors, but. And then you have to sort of maybe half the field go into the pits and see what we can go from there. But yeah, Ganassi maybe are due a victory around the 500. So it was Frank Eaty in 2012 was the last time they managed to take a victory. So maybe they are due one as a team as such, and sort of mix it up, maybe work together with drafting to somehow get a lap or two on the field if you do get a green race.
Yeah, Palou and Canan will certainly be, more than just a supporting role. They'll be up at the front dueling out there with Dixon. Johnson's been a huge surprise. Yes, he's had an awful lot of over experiences and 7 Cup championships, but his performance at Texas for me was the highlight of the season so far, going from 18th to 6th place, passing Dixon as well in the closing laps, finishing 6th overall. No one expected that from Johnson, from how he has been consistent and getting better over his rookie season last year, but didn't have the pace of the other Ganassi cars. And yeah, his first proper oval. I mean, Texas I think he's won 5 times in NASCAR there in the Cup Series, so he knows the track well, but it's totally different in IndyCar. So for him to have delivered that and then made a fast 12, he's not just an Indy500 rookie. He's a legitimate, he could be a legitimate winner this year, which I think might be asking a little too much, but he'll be up there throughout the majority of the race supporting Ganassi, I think. And in relation to that as well, just switching a little bit to Andretti, Grosjean's performance as well has been incredibly strong. And in practice 8, the day after qualifying, so on Monday, he was by far the most aggressive driver in the field, leading off carrying on rather from Barber, where he didn't make many friends out there, especially with Graham Rahal. So I don't know if that will work for Grosjean, but he'll certainly make other drivers step out of the way in the first 100 laps. He kind of reminds me a lot of Sato in the way he races now, except I think Sato has a bit more experience. But we'll expect Grosjean to be, getting in between the Ganassi drivers early on as well in the race.
Yeah. Well, speaking of sort of Grosjean and Johnson, then they bring audiences in from outside, obviously Grosjean being an ex-F1 driver and Johnson being a NASCAR driver. Do we think that's done? For me personally, I'd say that's intrigued my interest into IndyCar, particularly with the Indy500. And Grosjean was the fastest rookie for qualifying. Do we think that's done a lot for the viewership, making it slightly more popular around the world? Or, I don't know, what are our thoughts on them just being in a part of that fast 12? What do we think that's done?
Well, yeah, I think same, maybe not on par of say Alonso back in sort of 17 as such, but definitely, I mean, Grosjean's got the aura of the story of, say, his recovery in Bahrain, and then sort of saying, are they really rookies? I mean, if you look at 2000 and 2001, when Montoya and Castroneves won it back to back. Were they really rookies as well? It's sort of I know the rookie it's their first year, but are they really rookies to the extent of their sort of history of their career in motorsport? I know they're rookies in the actual seat they have, but it does bring the sort of European state, and then maybe people that are like the big sort of muscle cars that say Johnson drove, that they might be maybe a bit more inclined to watch the 500 over maybe sort of like Charlotte from last, and where NASCAR are this weekend. They'll watch that as well as the 500. So we'll see, but I definitely think 500 is growing.
Yeah, I think this year it's probably the most competitive and like diverse in the sense of what you were saying about ex-Formula One drivers and NASCAR drivers now as well. I haven't seen a field quite as exciting as this. And of course, we've got Montoya, who's not had the best of weeks. He's not had a car he wants. He's not enjoyed the handling of it either, but he will still be up there in the race, mixing it up. And yeah, it's always been a tradition for especially a lot of Americans in particular to watch Monaco, Indy, and then the Coca-Cola 600 that evening is something I've always done. And I think there's, like you were saying, there's big reasons now for people who are on the fence to be watching this year's special Memorial Day weekend of races on Sunday.
Yeah, definitely. I know from my point of view, that's the Indy 500 has always been one that I've watched or tried to watch, because it's normally on around the Monaco Grand Prix. But it's normally one that I try to watch. And for me now, seeing the drivers like Erickson and Grosjean in that Fast 12, Fast 6, it very much makes it very much exciting for me. But it then means that I then go on and look at the other drivers that are part of the grid. And as you say, it just makes it a really nice pool of drivers to sort of have your favourite or not have your favourite, and just watch some exciting racing. So yeah, as you say, if anyone's on the fence, I'd recommend watching it personally. But I wanted to stick with Grosjean just for a little bit longer and talk about Andretti's performance overall over the qualifying weekend, because yeah, Grosjean was in that Fast 12, but someone like Rossi just didn't perform very well. Do we think that's going to hinder them over the race on Sunday, or do you think they can sort of capitalise on the speed that Grosjean had and try and push the other drivers forward?
Yeah, Grosjean was the sole Andretti car there in the Fast 12, and it's quite unusual to see someone who is an Indy 500 rookie be leading the charge at Andretti. I don't think they'll have the strength to come back as a whole unit in the Indy 500, but Herta alone is capable of leading that race again this weekend and getting himself up there. Rossi's car, his week has not gone well compared like Montoya's. He's not had the car he's wanted. He described it as horrible, was very miserable during the qualifying session on the Saturday. I would say Alexander Rossi, for people who want to see excitement, that guy, he will go 3 wide on the outside in turn 1, on turn 4, and make it work. He's the only driver that seems to be able to do the craziest of moves and get away with it. And he's amazing to watch, but I remember he did that again last year. He's always been like this in the Indy 500, and he ended up having a crash. He got loose on his own coming out of turn 2. So maybe he won't see the race finish, or maybe he won't be in the top 5, but at least expect Herta to definitely be up there to join Grosjean in the top 10. And of course, Devin DiFrancesco. For him, it's just about completing the laps this year. So yeah, Andretti are kind of in a different space compared to Ganassi and Ed Carpenter Racing, which are clearly the teams who have got the raw pace, the raw draft speed, and on-track performance overall. They're the teams to watch out for. But I wouldn't forget about Penske either, because although Will Power was the only Penske driver to make the Fast 12, Grosjean making the Fast 12 as the only Andretti driver, with Newgarden and McLaughlin's performance this year, and the fact that they are mixing it up in the most recent practice session, they'll be mixing it up with Ganassi and Ed Carpenter. They just might not have the raw speed that the other teams have there to see the checkered flag in first place.
Yeah, Chris, any thoughts?
Pretty much covered it all, but as you've got to be in it to win it. I mean, Colton starts 25th, so might just sit at the back and be ready to pounce. Like I said, it's just all about being in the race to the end and avoiding any debris or any action that happens in front. You can sit at the back and wait to pounce, or just be at the front and try and avoid it all at the front. It is 500-mile race, 200 laps. So just avoid it or stay out of the way.
Yeah, it sounds as simple as that, really, doesn't it?
But going 240 miles an hour, just to interrupt. So yeah, at times.
yeah, we'll just throw that in there. That's fine.
Yeah.
So we mentioned the very exciting grid, and as you say, you got to be in it to win it. So we have 8 previous race winners of the Indy 500 actually on the grid this year. So we've got Kasia Neves, Juan Pablo Montoya, Takuma Sato, Scott Dixon's already won it, 2008, Tony Cannon, Alexander Rossi, Will Power, and Simon Pagenaud. So Kasia Neves himself can actually make himself a 5-time winner. Do we think he's in with a good shot this year, or how do we think he's going to perform over the race on Sunday?
Starting from sort of 27th on sort of row 9 as such, he's sort of one that will be along with sort of Colton at the back, maybe waiting for sort of the alternate strategy if you do get like a maybe 10-20 laps into the start, something happens maybe in the middle going on to an alternate. Does have all the experience, all the different strategies, sort of as you said, fourth time you could put currently winning with the likes of Foyt, Rick Mears and Al Unser. So and I think it's over like a 20-year span of wins, sort of between this first and last. So has done it, but I wouldn't put money on it personally. Maybe a pound as such if you are a betting person. More likely to see maybe if I had a money shot, maybe VK if you want to do a rule breaker, maybe the youngest winner rather than the most time winner, because Kasia Neves hasn't been sort of pumping the times in or pumping the speed in over sort of the practice over the last week or so.
Yeah, I don't think he has the same shot he had last year. And I say this with the race winner model on my shelf above me here. He will have to go through Ganassi, and I think the strength of Ganassi again and Ed Carpenter this year is much stronger than last year. So he will have to be at his best, and yeah, he hasn't been in the like top half as often as I would have hoped to see him, compared with even his teammate Pagenaud this year. So it's definitely someone to watch. You can never count him out. And yeah, if there's a crazy strategy development over the course of the race or a lot of crashes that he avoids, I guarantee he will be in the top 5. But other than that, I think he'll be struggling to get through the mid part of the pack.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one if he does win. It's going to be a very exciting race if he does manage to make it 5 times, and that will be record breaking, as we say. And yeah, as you say, Chris, maybe we'll get the youngest winner rather than the most time winner. But you never know. We will see what happens. It's going to be an exciting race either way. Just before we go, do either of you have any predictions for Sunday? Do you know who might win, or any other places you'd like to predict? Jay?
Well, funnily enough, I agree with Chris about VK. I think he's probably more than just a dark horse. I think he's my pick of the bunch. His early aggressive driving in the previous Indy 500s and his raw pace and consistency this year, I think he'll be a very strong threat to Ganassi. And someone to look out for as well as like a backup is, I think, Marcus Erickson. He is extremely confident about his race car and believes this is his year to do it. He'll have to go through Dixon, of course, and Palou, but Erickson could be a real threat for the win as a kind of in a way, a surprise or an upset winner maybe to Dixon fans. But yeah, keep an eye on Erickson as well.
Yeah, I'd probably say VK probably for the win, and then it's a flip of the coin really between Grosjean and Johnson for Rookie of the Year. It'll be literally maybe them two, maybe on the last lap or so if they're both still in it. Touch wood, no collisions. It'll be nice to see them see the flag. And then it would be onwards to the as we said earlier on, it would be Monaco early afternoon, this mid-afternoon, and then the Coke 600 in the evening. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be a good Sunday of racing, I feel. But yeah, so Jay, I just wanted to ask as well if you have any predictions for the rest of the IndyCar season, which I think ends in September, doesn't it? So I didn't know if you had any, who you think might come out on top overall this season.
Well, I think Will Power, honestly, especially on his road course performance. I mean, yeah, the Indy 500 is a totally different animal. But his consistency, he seems to be delivering, not making mistakes, and certainly not getting angry like he would used to as much as he has. I want to say Award should be up there by the end of the year, but McLaren's pace is a bit hit and miss at times. But his ability with that car this year is phenomenal as well. And I think Newgarden. Pay attention to Newgarden. And we'll have to see if Ganassi's pace continues in this way after the Indy, although that's not typical to be seen. But of course, we've got 2 races at Iowa Speedway later this year, so that'll be more oval racing to come. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. I don't suppose you have any predictions for the year for IndyCar season, Chris?
Well, Newgarden's won twice, and Will Power will have to take a victory eventually. You can't sort of. I know consistency is key as such, and slow and steady wins the race as such when it comes to, as the phrase goes. Even though you're going sort of 200 miles an hour, but I suppose you can't finish third and fourth all the time and win. And hope reliability comes into place for your contenders. But Newgarden's took victory twice, and Will Power's yet to take a victory. So I know it's a race of, I think, 17 or 18. But that might come a creep on him eventually. But I'd say, yeah, keep an eye on Newgarden and maybe Alex Palou as well. Will Power's won the title before, but Palou, I'd say.
Yeah. Lovely. Okay, well, we're actually done there. So let us know your predictions for the season. Who do you think will come out on top? Where do you think people will place? Let us know your predictions for Sunday. You never know. Maybe Scott Dixon will convert pole, or maybe he won't. Maybe we will get the youngest winner ever. But let us know. Thank you very much for watching or listening wherever you found us. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, as well as subscribe to YouTube and Spotify, or visit us on thepitcaronline.net. A very, very special thanks to Jae and Chris. Where can we find you guys on socials, Jae?
You can find me at my Twitter handle at powis_3, the number 3, and also at thepitcrewonline.net at jpowis.
Lovely. Chris?
And I'm on Twitter at C_Lordy91.
Lovely. And you'll find me on Instagram and Twitter with @Team Motorsport Girl. And that is it from us. So as always, we will see you out on track.